Dan said, we are in Matthew chapter 8. Just one chapter. There's a lot here. Title lesson is Jesus Used the Power of a King. Brother Robinson in the Sunday school material uses Matthew 8:17 as our key verse. That it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah, the prophet, saying, himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses. The application of the student will conclude that Jesus has unlimited power over all things that hinder and limit him. As we look at this morning's lesson, we're going to take a look at several miracles that Jesus performed. The first one in Matthew chapter 8 is healing of a leper. And that's followed by healing of a palsied man, the centurion's servant. And then we'll see Peter's mother-in-law, and yes, Peter was married. Peter had a mother-in-law. But we're going to see that Jesus healed his mother-in-law. We're going to hear from Jesus about some tests for discipleship. And then we'll see Jesus having power over the storms. And then finally, over the demons. So a lot to cover. We'll see how it goes this morning. Miracles. What's the purpose of miracles? To confirm the word. Why didn't Jesus just cure everybody? Wasn't his purpose. His purpose was to confirm the word. There is a lot of emphasis that is put on miracles today. As you observe, you're going to see some major differences between what Jesus did and his purpose, in contrast to what are so-called miracles performed today. Now, that's an outcrop of the study, but really, the essence of the miracles that Jesus performed, the ones that we'll see this morning, is he had a message. And that message was confirmed by the things that he did. They were prophesied in the Old Testament. The Pharisees, scribes, the priest, were all very familiar with the prophecies of the miracles that he would perform. And yet what you're going to see also is that in spite of him fulfilling all of those prophecies, doing things that no other man could do, they still rejected Jesus Christ. So, that said, let's go ahead and get started. Would somebody read Matthew 8, 1 through 4?
When he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched the man, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately the leper was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, See thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer thy gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them.
Okay. So as Matthew begins, and again, these, what we see in each of these gospel accounts, you'll find that various pieces are filled in within other of the gospel accounts. But this follows immediately after his Sermon on the Mount, which we finished the last 2 weeks taking a look at. He came down from the mountain, verse 1 of chapter 8 says, when he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. They were following him all over the place. Why?
To see what he would do.
See what he would do. Among those that followed him were what types of people?
Believers and non-believers.
I'm sorry?
Believers and non-believers.
Believers and non-believers. There were those that were disciples. Disciples of John, who, when Jesus came, John pointed them to Jesus, the Messiah. And Jesus beginning his ministry, these disciples followed after him. There were those that wanted to see all the excitement. There were those that had infirmities that wanted to be healed. And then we'll see that there were also those that were sent of the scribes and the Pharisees and the priests because they wanted to disclaim Jesus. So you have large multitudes, but they were mixed for the most part. In most instances, they were mixed. In reality, there weren't a lot of true believers. And when I say that, what am I talking about? People that have saved. So believer is someone who's repented and accepted Jesus Christ as their Savior. Those that recognize Jesus as the Messiah. Baptized and were following. There were not a lot of those, but there were some. Many were following just because of the hubbub, the commotion. We see that today. We see large crowds gather out of curiosity. We see protests. We see riots. And many of these that are there to look and see. The problem is you have to watch where you are. You get caught up in things that sometimes we, as Christians, shouldn't be caught up in. All right. That's my political announcement. So, when he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. Verse 2, and behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. Now, what is a leper? What is the disease of leprosy?
Highly contagious.
Well, it's a disease of the skin.
Disease of the skin, yes. Had times of high contagion. What was the restriction among the Jews, the Old Testament, for lepers?
They were separated from everybody else. When they walked, they had to call out, leper, leper.
Yeah.
Unclean.
They were separated from everybody else. They had to identify themselves. Anybody that came in contact with them was then unclean also. And so there was a lot of stigmatism, isolation, that went with leprosy. Now, here we see in verse 2, and behold, there came a leper and worshipped him. This leper, amongst these multitudes, did what? Worshipped him, came into the midst of them. Evidently, so here's Jesus, and we've got the multitudes around, that leper coming in, having contact. In fact, verse 3 tells us, Jesus put forth his hand and touched him. According to the law, when you touched or you touch, then you become unclean. Here we have this leper who broke the laws of that separation for what purpose? Worship Jesus. Setting Jesus, number one, putting him forth above all else, sometimes requires that we step out of the comfort zone or the norms. Here, he worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. So there's two things here. If thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. What is he saying about Jesus? Two things.
He's saying if he's willing,
If he's willing,
he has the power.
he has the power. He's recognizing the sovereignty of Jesus Christ, the power of Jesus Christ, his deity. Thou canst make me clean. The real question was,
Will you?
will you? Now, why did he say that? If thou wilt.
We should always pray in the will of God.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's God's will to be done, not ours.
It's his will to be done, not ours. We oftentimes have in our mind, if God would just do this, or if God would do that, or if God would do this. And yet God doesn't. Why? Sometimes in our understanding, we lack knowledge. We don't understand purpose or reason behind. God has full, complete understanding. He performs at his will. Opening up. Why doesn't God just cure all of their illnesses? illnesses. Where do these diseases come from in the first place? Sin. All the misery that man deals with today is as a result of sin. Beginning with Adam's sin, but also that sin that we ourselves carry. So, if thou wilt is giving Jesus his proper place, that his will would be performed. He knows that he can do it, if he will. Verse 3, and Jesus put forth his hand and touched him. And we talked about that uncleanness that's related to leprosy, both of the individual that has the disease, but also those that they come in contact with. He says, Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. How fast? Immediately, not gradually. I've seen some video of so-called miracles performed, those that couldn't walk. And what I've seen does not depict an immediate or a complete. And I think this was immediate and complete, 100%. I have seen those that supposedly couldn't walk, that struggled to their feet and stood, and all were excited. That's not the power of God. You know, with the lame man that is healed later on, we'll take a look at, not today, but later on, what did he do when he was healed?
Jumped up and danced around and
Yeah, it was immediate, and it was complete. And that's the example in each and every case where Jesus performed the miracles. He put forth his hand, he touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. Short and simple. Didn't go through some long narrative. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Verse 4, Jesus saith unto him, See thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. So, what was his instruction to the leper? Yep. He's go do what the law commands. He says, tell no man. Why does he tell him, tell no man?
he still wanted to minister to the whole city where he was.
This was a challenge that Jesus had, was everywhere he went. There were multitudes that followed, and many wanted miracles performed. Now, is that the reason behind it? I don't know. You know, that would be my supposition. But he instructs him very much. Here, tell no man. One writer said that the timing, Jesus' timing for the things to be fulfilled in his ministry was not at that point. That he wanted these things to be publicized abroad because in another passage he said, my time has not come. I don't know exactly the reason. It could have to do with those or other reasons behind it, but very simply, Jesus said unto him, See thou tell no man, but do what? Go and give thy gift that Moses commanded. And you'll find that in Leviticus chapter 14, verses 2 through 32. And there, the instruction was that there would be 3 offerings given as fulfillment of the law. Fulfillment of the law. Jesus was accused of breaking the law. Did Jesus ever break the law? No. He came and he fulfilled. And he encouraged that the people would abide by the law. Any other thoughts or questions on this? All right, let's move on, verse 5. The second one that we're given here is a centurion's servant that was healed. Verse 5, And when Jesus was entered in Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home, sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say unto this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. And Jesus heard it, he marveled. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus saith unto the centurion, Go thy way, and as thou believest, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour. Again, as you look at the different Gospels, you'll see bits and pieces that are filled out in the other Gospels. In Luke chapter 7, we actually find out that the centurion himself did not come. He sent a delegation of the Jews to Jesus, Luke tells us. And there, Jesus is speaking with that delegation that came. Here, Jesus entered into Capernaum. There came to him a centurion. Now, a centurion would mean, what would it tell us about this man? He was a...
Officer in the army.
In what army?
Roman.
Roman, being Jew or Gentile? Gentile, obviously. So, he entered into Capernaum. There came unto him a centurion, actually a representative, or representatives, and in fact Luke tells us that it's elders of the Jews that came and spoke on his behalf, speaking his words for him. Why? Luke tells us that they had great respect for this man. This man gives outward indication of believing in Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Now, how did he learn about it? Well, the influence of some around him. That's the only way that it could have occurred. There came unto him a centurion, beseeching him. What was the ask? Lord, my servant lieth at home, sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. What does this indicate about the character of the man? Yeah, he was a caring man. Luke tells us that he had funded the building of the synagogue for the Jews. Here we find that he cared for his servant. That was not always the case. But here, he cared for the servant. He says that he lies at home sick of the palsy. The palsy is what? Paralysis. From whatever, we don't know. And grievously tormented. So he's in great pain. He had compassion for that servant, his servant. Verse 7, and Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. Now, what is the response that's given back to Jesus?
You don't have to do that. You have the power to do it anyhow.
Yeah, verse 8, the centurion answered and said, Lord, I'm not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. Now, in verse 8, or in chapter 8, and the first 4 verses, we see that the healing was performed when Jesus touched him and said, I will, be thou clean. Here, this centurion has the faith. He says, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof. Why? Well, he was a Gentile, but he also recognized his own unworthiness in relationship to Jesus. He says, I'm not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. Now, when you look at Luke, Jesus was already on his way when he sent a delegation to him and said, Lord, I'm not worthy. You don't even need to come under my roof, but you can speak from where you are. Have you seen or heard of a miracle like that today? No. Or a so-called miracle. Speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. He goes on in verse 9, for I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. Now, what's the centurion's point in what he's saying?
I recognize authority. I'm under authority, and I have authority. And you have even greater authority.
Yep, that's right. He recognizes that as a centurion, that he has the authority to speak, and they obey. It's done. And he recognizes, as Brother Homer said, that the authority of Jesus is that even greater, and that if he decided to, he could speak, and it would be done. They would obey. Again, we already saw in the first 4 verses where Jesus touched and spoke. We're going to see that Jesus has power over not just illnesses, but over demons and over nature itself. And in each case, he could speak it and it be done. The response of Jesus to what the centurion had said. What was Jesus' response?
I found this kind of faith in Israel.
Why does he say that? Why is that important for Jesus to point out?
He was surrounded by people that didn't have that faith.
Yeah,
Plus, Israel is who he first came to.
Israel's who he came to. Israel was given the law and the prophets. Israel was the chosen nation of God. They were the people that were to be spreading the word of God throughout the world that all might come to repentance. But they had not believed. There was always a remnant, those that believed. And as he hears this faith from this centurion, he acknowledges here, verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. I say unto you, verse 11, that many shall come from the east and the west, and that references back to Psalm 107, and it's speaking of whom? Gentiles, east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and who is that referencing? Israel. The law, the prophets were given to Israel. The command to go was given to Israel. And yet here he says that many shall come from the east and the west. The Gentiles shall sit down with Israel in the kingdom of heaven. Now, verse 12. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What's he saying here in verse 12?
Those Israelites that have never experienced salvation will be on the outside.
That's right. Salvation is the key. Being saved. The children of the kingdom, those that reject the promise of the Messiah, those that reject Jesus Christ, will be on the outside, shall be cast into outer darkness. That's a term that Matthew alone uses, outer darkness. What's that referring to? Separation from God. Separation from God. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Torment, anger. Verse 13, and Jesus said unto the centurion, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so it be done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour, without Jesus even coming to the Any other thoughts, comments? Now, again, there were multitudes there that saw these things. There will continue throughout his ministry to be those that followed after, that heard the words, and they saw the miracles that confirmed the words, and yet they continued to reject. Verse 14. And when Jesus was come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them. So there are those that believe that that Peter was the first pope. Peter was not married. Peter had a vow of poverty. What's this telling us? Oops. Yeah. Not only was Peter married, but his wife had a mom. I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? Mother-in-law. Not only that, but he had a house. We find that Peter had a business. Fishing business. Jesus called him from that fishing business. Now, when he left that, what did he do with it?
He left somebody in charge to leave to get back.
That's right. Because later on, we'll find out after the crucifixion of Jesus that Peter did what? He went back to his business for a time. So, Paul, in writing to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, 1 through 3, gives a warning for those. There would be a time when those would come along and they would preach heresy that you shouldn't give in marriage, that you should vow poverty. It's not true. The scriptures debunk it, and yet there are many people that have accepted that. All right, moving on. Here they enter into Peter's house. This is in Capernaum. That's where Peter had relocated. He saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever. Now, typically, this just speaks of Peter's mother-in-law, who was responsible for caring for elderly? The children. Okay, and so that may very well have been the case here, is that his mother-in-law lived with him. So think about that. You may have your mother-in-law living with you. That's okay. They're good people. I've got a good mother-in-law. So don't be afraid of it. Yes.
There was, it was kind of common for a house to be, where we think of rooms, there was separate quarters around, and extended family lived together.
Yep, that's true. Song about a 9-room. Anyway. No, that's true. Even in America, more so in earlier years, you would add on portions of the house for extended family. All right. Goes on, verse 15. So she's sick of a fever. We're not given specifics to it. But here in verse 15, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her. There's no mention that he even said anything. So now we've seen touch and speak. We've seen speak from a distance. And here we see touched her hand, the fever left. And again, in all of these instances, it was performed completely and fully. In fact, verse 15 says, and she arose and ministered unto them. What's that mean?
Very cooking.
She's already busy about, woman, what are you doing in the kitchen? She got up and went back to doing what she was doing before. Mother-in-laws are like that. They've got to be busy doing something all the time. Verse 16, when the even was come, they brought unto him many that were possessed with devils, and he cast out the spirit with his word, and healed all that were sick. that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah, and that's 53:4, the prophet saying, himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses. Now there are some that believe that Isaiah is fulfilled with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, him taking on our sins, but this identifies for us that Jesus fulfilled this during his ministry. These were these miracles that he performed to prove who he was and the message that he was delivering to them. Any other thoughts on these verses? We're just moving around along, aren't we?
In both this case here, Peter's mother-in-law, and with the leper, the touching was forbidden. That made him unclean under the law.
Yeah.
But yet he didn't, and he never broke the law, so he
That's right. Did Jesus become unclean? No.
that was part of the law.
No.
There's another occasion where he touched the body of a young man and healed him, and he would have been unclean at that point.
Yep. That's right. All right, verse 18. Now when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart unto the other side. And a certain scribe came and said unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. And Jesus saith unto him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. And another of his disciples said unto him, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. But Jesus said unto him, Follow me, and let the dead bury their dead. So, here in these verses, we see, again, following the healing of Peter's mother-in-law. There were great multitudes around him. He gave command to depart to the other side. And then we have a scribe who came unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. Now, scribe is who? What?
The law.
Someone that copies the law. That was their job, copy the law. Because they copied the law,
They were more likely to be Pharisees than Sadducees, but they could be either.
they could be either.
Copy the law.
I was not a real good studier. In fact, I almost didn't do it in school. But I found that oftentimes, if I wrote notes down, even if I never ever referenced them again, that there was a certain amount that stuck in my head just from writing them down. Can you imagine writing the scriptures down? Did you ever have to go up to the board and write, I will not talk in class, or I will not 100 times, or however many? And we had to write it out on paper a lot and turn them in 500 times. You sort of learn it, don't you? And they were considered sort of the lawyers of the law. Those that knew, if you needed to know something about the law, they knew. Many of them rejected Jesus in spite of it, even though the law was really about him. It was about Jesus. But many of them rejected. Here it says, and a certain scribe came and said unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. Now, does that sound like a commitment? It does. I'll go wherever thou goest. Jesus' response to him was what?
I don't have a permanent home.
I don't have a permanent home. The foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. Did he tell him not to follow him? Did the scribe follow him? I don't know. But Jesus isn't hiding anything from him. As a disciple of Jesus Christ, there are expectations. There are expectations of you and I as disciples of Jesus Christ. Here, he's telling this man, I have no place to lay down my head. You know, he had to be busy about his father's business. That's what he told his parents. And so there were certain things that would not be available to him. You know, I don't. How attached are you to your bed? How many of you like staying with relatives and sleeping on different? Why? Uncomfortable. You know, and we live in a plush society where you're going to stay in a bed in all likelihood, unless you choose to camp out on the ground or something. We've become so accustomed to plushness. But here Jesus is telling him, he's giving him the reality that there's not a place for him to lay his head. What's he really telling him? To follow Jesus is going to require certain things. That's right. Self-sacrifice, self-denial, and self-discipline. That's a challenge. We struggle with that today. You know, how well do we follow Jesus Christ? If he were to tell us this, what would our response be toward it? I don't know what the scribe did. I probably think he didn't go, but I don't know that. He goes on in verse 21, continuing the thought, and another of his disciples indicates what? Followers. Someone who had trusted, placed their faith in, believed, like you and I. Another of his disciples said unto him, Lord, suffer me first to go bury my father. Now that sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
We have no indication of that, but even aged or sick.
Yeah, we don't know the condition of his father. Again, the children were responsible for taking care of the parents in their elderly ages. What was he saying?
I have family commitments.
Yeah, he's
God
saying
calls you to something, he wants you to go now.
he wants you to go now. This man had his, we would call it excuse today, for not going and doing what Jesus would have him to do. Now, you can substitute that with, I don't know, come up with your own. If you're like me, you probably already have. You know, why don't I follow Jesus more closely? Why don't I do what he would have for me to do? We have our excuses, our reasons. Why don't I show up to church? Why don't I talk to this person about Jesus? Why don't I study the scriptures? We have our reasons. Now, this one, on the surface, may sound very legitimate. Suffer me to first go bury my father. We can come up with 1,000 different reasons for not following Jesus and not doing what he would have us to do in our lives. And too oftentimes, we do. Other things become more important.
And in both of these, there's kind of the indication that, you know, I want to do this on my terms.
That's right.
I've known this for a while before I started looking for a missionary for Harmony, but we have almost a breed of preachers now coming out of, I know the Arkansas Cabby and Missionary Baptist Seminary in Little Rock. And I found also in Louisiana men who, and you know, we've got lots of churches that are open. And the reason is we've got a lot of preachers coming out now that simply say, I won't go unless I'm fully supported.
Yeah.
Or I won't go if it's beyond a certain barrier.
That's right.
I had one in Louisiana that said, you know, reaching you would call anywhere in a 50-mile radius.
Yeah. We put our, what do I want to say here? Contingencies, that's not really the word I'm looking for, but we,
want it to be convenient.
exactly. We may be looking for the right time that works for us. You know, time is inconvenient. We're pretty busy people, right? I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to do that. Yeah. We had one man that said, once I'm retired, then I'll serve Jesus. And he retired. And before you know it, his health broke and he couldn't. And it wasn't that long after that he passed. He had a desire to do it, but not a great enough desire. And I think, you know, the reason that you're here today is because you see the importance of the teachings of Jesus Christ. That you understand that this is a message that needs to get out there. But are we willing to make the sacrifices now to do what we should be doing? I'll serve once, fill in the blank. What's holding us back? All right, anything else? Verse 23, and when he was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. And his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. And he saith unto them, Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the wind and the sea, and there was a great calm. But the men marveled, saying, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? So, he had already given the command in verse 18. Now when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave command to depart unto the other side. Well, he then deals with these two disciples. There may have been others, but these are captured for us. Verse 23, when he was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. There arose a great tempest. Now, what sea is this referring to? Galilee, Sea of Galilee. Now, how big is the Sea of Galilee?
Big enough it makes some big waves.
It does. A lot of it.
Been that.
I'm sorry?
Been there and done that. we were on a boat big enough to easily carry 50 or 100 people. And it was still discomforting when we got out on it, and there was rain and wind and waves. You know, I can imagine what they felt like in the big boat.
Yeah. They say that the geography there with the mountains and the sheer cliffs on the one side, the Sea of Galilee itself is 230, I think 235 below sea level. There's a great change in climate there, causing hot and cold, and
It is not a big sea.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see across it.
yeah,
You can see the shoreline on the other side.
but it gets rough.
Yes.
It gets rough. And in fact, we see other instances where it got rough. It was covered with the waves in verse 24. Where was Jesus? He was asleep. Verse 25, and his disciples came to him and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. Now, they were on this ship with Jesus. Should they have had fear? Sleep or awake? Yeah. Now, if I was on this ship, would I be among them saying, Lord?
What's interesting to me about this, and I've been quiet so far, what interests me about this is that they went to Jesus thinking he could do something about it, but then when he did do something about it, they said, how did that happen?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and I was, as I was studying this, I was looking, okay, so he heals he heals a leper. And that's something that's very visible. It's a skin issue. Very visible. He does it, it's immediate. The centurion's servant was healed from a distance. And then Peter's mother. One minute she's burning up with fever, and the next she's up and serving. How could they not? And yet, as you said, here, after seeing all of these, they still, how did he do that? What kind of man is this? Were they scared? Well, they said, Lord, save us, we perish. They thought they were going to die. What was his response? Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? And when I hear that, or I read that from Jesus, I think back to the centurion and the great faith that the centurion, a Gentile, one who was not raised in the Scriptures, who didn't have the teachings from a child of the Old Testament, what great faith he had, and Jesus' renouncement of Israel, that he had not seen great faith like that in Israel. Verse 26, then he arose, he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Now there have been many people that have tried to control the weather. How successful? Yeah, it seems like no matter what we do, even though we may know something's coming, hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, that preparing, trying to do something with them, it used to be that they tried to see the clouds to cause rain. I don't know that there was any success at all. If there was, we don't do it today. Evidently, it wasn't very significant if it had any effect. He arose and he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was great calm. What's different about this as opposed to these others that we've looked at so far? Nature.
This is nature, this is the earth.
Yeah. Nature. The earth. Why not? Who is Jesus?
He's the creator.
He's the creator of all. If he can create, certainly he controls. And he does. And for us, that should be great peace and comfort, that he's in control.
Think about what we're going through right now. God is in control.
God is in control.
He's still in control, just like he was here.
That's right.
But do we have enough faith to trust in him?
Like
Our
the
faith
disciples.
is like the disciples. We're
Well,
going to perish.
they were the only, and they weren't the first. I mean, in the wilderness, they hadn't even been gone
Yep.
10 minutes, and they,
Yep.
and they were like, hey, we're out here, what the heck is going to happen to us now?
Yeah.
We're like that.
Elijah.
Just like it.
What about Elijah? He said, Lord, all these, I've got everybody chasing me.
Only one left.
I'm the only one left. And what was the response?
I've got 7,000 more.
Yeah. I got 7, look just like you, and I can make more. We oftentimes, even as Christians, even knowing the power of God, we oftentimes either forget or we just don't maintain the faith that we need to carry us through those tough times. But oftentimes in our lives, those are some of the most significant opportunities for us to witness to other people. It's, if things are going hunky-dory, everybody know what hunky-dory is? If things are always going great, they're just, and you never run into any potholes, where's the proof to those that are lost? Where's the testimony? Sometimes in our life, we will have situations that occur that it could be God testing us, could be God proving us, it could be for a testimony to other people. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Jesus Christ delivers his people. This was immediate. He arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was great calm. was it. The men marveled, saying, what manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? Yeah, that has me scratching my head. What manner of man is... Of course, I'm looking back 2,000 years, and I see the testimony of the Word of God. You know, Jesus, very clear to us who he is. They walked with him, and they talked with him. But I think, just like us today, sometimes we forget. It's not at the forefront of our mind that God is in control, Jesus in control. Anything else? All right, verse 28. When he had come to the other side of the country of Gergesenes, that word, location. Say that again. Gergesenes, thank you. There met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? And there was a good way off from them a herd of many swine feeding. So the devils besought him, saying, if thou cast us out, suffer us to go away into the herd of swine. And he said unto them, go. And when they were come out, they went into the herd of swine, and behold, the whole herd of swine ran violently down a steep place into the sea, and perished in the waters. And they that kept them fled, and went their way into the city, and told everything, and what was befallen to the possessed of the devils. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they besought him that he would depart out of their coast. So here it says when he arrives to the other side, so he was Capernaum on the western shore of Galilee, traveled across the sea to the eastern shore of Galilee, which put him in the land of Decapolis, which was the larger area that within it had, yes. I don't know why I have such trouble with that. Anyway, put him on the other side, and there met him two possessed with the devils. Now, what's different about Mark and Luke to Matthew here? They only showed one. In all likelihood, they referred to the more prominent. It could be that one spoke for the two of them. I don't know. But here, Matthew identifies that there were actually two. There met him two, possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by that way. They cried out, saying, what have we to do with Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? A couple things here in verse 29 that these devils identify, which are what? About Jesus. They knew exactly who he was. It says here, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? The second thing is, so what did they recognize?
They know what their end is.
They know what their end is. They knew who Jesus was. They knew what their end was. Why did they do something about it? They made a choice long ago, and that choice was sealed. There was nothing they could do at that point. We make a choice, accept or reject, and when this life is over, there is no second chance. If you're going to accept Jesus as your Savior, you have to do it in this life. Now, how long is your life?
We don't know.
But a vapor. Yeah, but a vapor. I think they're saying that the average age of men nowadays is up to like 74, 75, and women 78, something like that. However, how young do people die? See those that are born and die. You see some that live 100. but you have no guarantee. What do you need to do about salvation? You need to get it settled before it's too late. They knew. They knew who he was. They acknowledged him. They asked the question, art thou come hither to torment us before the time? They evidently knew that there were things yet to come. And so the time was not then.
Jesus hadn't even spoken yet that come evening, and they knew he was going to cast them out.
That's right. That's right. Verse 30, and there was a good way off from them a herd of many swine. Oh, where are we past? I'm sorry. There was a good herd of swine. The devils were cast into the swine. What did they do? Yeah, they went crazy, ran into the sea. What were the people there concerned about? Here we had two men that people feared. You didn't walk that way. You didn't go that way out of fear. These men, they found sitting in their right mind, conversing just as a normal person. What were they concerned about? Yeah, material things. Jesus exhibited control over even the demons. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?